Wildfires. You've seen the headlines. They feel like they're happening more often, they're getting bigger, and they're hitting closer to home for so many of us. This isn't just a problem for one state or one country anymore. It's a global crisis that's literally changing the world around us. So if we're going to survive them, we first have to understand them.
You know, for millions of people, this isn't just some scary poster. It's a nightmare that feels more and more real every single year. But here's the thing. Being ready, truly ready, starts with understanding exactly what it is we're up against.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Are these giant fires a natural disaster, something totally out of our hands? Or are they a man-made one? As we're about to see, the answer is, well, it's complicated.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we've got to look at the science behind it all. See, fire itself isn't the bad guy. In a lot of ecosystems, it's actually a necessary, even life-giving force. But there are two very, very different kinds of fire.
It's kind of wild to think about, but for thousands of years, forests didn't just survive fires, they needed them. These beneficial, low-intensity fires were like a natural reset button. They'd creep along the forest floor, cleaning up dead leaves and undergrowth, putting nutrients back into the soil, and even helping some trees pop open their seeds. They kept the forest healthy without killing off the big, mature trees.
But then, for about a century, our policy was super simple. See a fire? Put it out, immediately. And listen, it seemed like the right thing to do. But it had this huge unintended consequence. All that flammable stuff that used to burn away naturally, dead leaves, fallen branches, small bushes, it just kept piling up, year after year after year. We basically turned our forests into overstuffed tinder boxes, just waiting for a spark.
And on top of that overgrown fuel, you add the threat multiplier, climate change. We're seeing higher temperatures, longer droughts, all of which are basically sucking every last drop of moisture out of the vegetation. This creates more and more of what experts call fire weather days. You know, those hot, bone-dry, windy days that are just perfect for megafires that burn hotter and spread faster than anything we've ever dealt with. Which brings us to this absolutely staggering number, 2.5 billion tons. What is that? Well, according to a recent study in the journal Nature, that's how much extra CO2 could be pumped into the atmosphere because of all this increased wildfire activity. It's shrinking our global carbon budget and creating this terrifying feedback loop. More fires mean more emissions, which leads to a warmer climate, which, you guessed it, leads to even more fires.
All right, so let's zoom in now. Let's go from the global science to a real-world example to see how all these pieces come together. We're going to take a look at a specific event, the Pirate Fire, which broke out in Riverside County, California.
Just look at how fast this thing moved. At 5:19 p.m., it's a 15-acre brush fire. Manageable, maybe. But just an hour later, it's exploded to 100 acres. By 7:30, it's 200 acres and totally out of control. This is the terrifying speed of a modern wildfire, just ripping across the landscape, powered by dry conditions and all that light, grassy fuel.
Now, when a fire like this breaks out, experts have to predict its behavior. They're looking at things like strong offshore winds, which can gust up to 65 miles an hour, and the slope of the land. I mean, even a gentle 4% slope can make a fire spread way faster. But beyond the path of the flames, there's another threat, an unseen enemy that travels even further, the smoke. And the biggest danger hiding in that smoke is something called PM 2.5. These are microscopic particles so tiny you can't see them, but they're small enough to get deep into your lungs and even pass into your bloodstream. And here's what's so important to get. That danger can hang around in the air for days or even weeks, long after the fire itself is out.
And look, this smoke is bad for literally everyone, but some groups are way more vulnerable. We're talking about anyone with asthma or other respiratory issues, people with heart conditions, little kids whose lungs are still developing, pregnant women, and the elderly. For these folks, the risk of serious health problems from smoke is much, much higher.
Okay, so that's the risk. It's a lot, I know. But what can we actually do about it? How do we protect ourselves, our families, and our homes? The good news is there are real, concrete steps you can take.
So, when that air quality alert comes in, the game plan is pretty simple. First, get indoors and stay there. Shut all the windows and doors. If you've got an air purifier with what's called a HEPA filter, crank that thing on. Definitely avoid any heavy exercise, especially outside. And if you absolutely have to go out, wear a good, snug-fitting N95 or P2 mask. Your cloth mask isn't going to cut it against these tiny particles.
But what about being proactive? Well, probably the single most important thing for any homeowner in a fire-prone area is this concept,
Defensible Space. This is all about creating a buffer zone around your house. Honestly, it can be the difference between a house that makes it and a house that doesn't.
So what does that actually look like? The whole idea is to break the fire's path to your home. On flat ground, you need a good amount of space between shrubs and trees. But if your house is on a slope, you've got to be even more careful. Fire loves to run uphill, so you need even more space between plants to stop those flames from climbing right up to your doorstep.
And it's not just about the plants. You also have to think about hardening your home. Because here's the thing a lot of people don't realize. Many homes aren't lost to that giant wall of flame. They're lost because of tiny, flying embers that can travel for a mile or more. Putting fine mesh screens on your vents, closing up the underside of your roof eaves, and just keeping your gutters clean of leaves, these are all critical steps to stop those embers from finding a place to land and start a fire.
Now, protecting individual homes is huge, but if we really want to solve this problem for the long haul, we need to think bigger. We have to shift our entire way of thinking, away from fighting fire and toward coexisting with it.
And you know what's incredible? A key part of the solution might come from wisdom that's thousands of years old. For millennia, indigenous communities have used a practice called cultural burning. And these aren't just random burns to clear brush. They are highly sophisticated, carefully planned fires designed to manage the land, encourage healthy new growth, and prevent the exact kind of massive, catastrophic wildfires we're seeing today.
And this isn't just old wisdom. Modern science is proving how effective it is. Research is showing that cultural burning doesn't just lower fire risk, it actually creates healthier ecosystems. Just look at this chart. It leads to way higher levels of essential nutrients in the soil, like carbon and nitrogen, compared to standard controlled burns. It's about healing the land, not just clearing it. Of course, even with the best prevention in the world, these disasters are still going to happen. And when they do, the road to recovery is long and it's complicated. It's not just about cleaning up debris or dealing with insurance. It's about getting mental health support and figuring out how to rebuild a community. That's why official resources, like the ones you see here, are so incredibly vital. They're the first step in helping people heal.
So when you look at everything, from the science of a single flame to the health of our entire planet, from hardening our homes to healing the land, it's pretty clear that our relationship with fire has to change. It's forcing us to look at our past mistakes and maybe, just maybe, embrace some older, wiser ways of living on this planet. Because the world is on fire, and that really leaves us all with one very important question.